Woohoo! I'm so excited. Why is 2024 the year in which I am reading books that features this kind of humor? This is potentially one of my favorite books of the year already. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Leandra, the TBR0, and for this cozy reading vlog, I'm going to be reading some fantasy mystery genre blends. I have 3 genre blends in mind for this, and they're all fantasy mysteries, meaning that the world in which they're set are fantasy, but the A plot is a mystery. The first one I'm hoping to tackle is by Rebecca Roanhouse. It's called Tread of Angels. I have it on audio through Libby, and at one-time speed it's only 4 hours. So this is a novella. I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about that. I will say that for mysteries, shorter form is the cream of the crop. For instance, when it comes to short story collections, mysteries tend to be very strong in that field. And also, most mysteries that I'm reading aren't more than 350 pages. If they are, you start to think, woo, that is a chonky mystery. I'm especially excited because I borrowed it on a whim, seeing that it was available, and didn't think much of it until I realized, wait, this has a mystery plot. It's also set in a historical setting, 1883 Colorado mountains, and we also have magic involved too. So we are following Celeste. She is a card sharp, and there's a bit of a Western feel too. Obviously, we are in the 19th century, and so I've read the first chapter already. It opens in a saloon of all places. So not only is it a fantasy mystery, but it's also got historical Western vibes. I am a bit worried because as a 4-hour audiobook, that means it's filling its pages with a lot of different things. We'll see if they clash or if they have enough time to develop. But so far, I'm very excited for it. And I'm really excited for it to be my first one of this vlog. The next book I'm hoping to tackle is Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. This one was published in the UK maybe about a year ago. It was very popular, especially on TikTok. So they thought, why not bring it to the United States? I ended up getting an ARC for this through NetGalley, so thank you, Mira. Thank you, NetGalley, for providing it for me. Unfortunately, I haven't had time to read it. The publication date was August 20th, so it really hasn't been that long since it came out, but obviously long enough in which my library was able to get a physical copy, so I thought, why not? Might as well borrow the physical copy while I have it. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure Hoopla has the audio, so I could immersion read. We'll see if I feel like that, but this edition has the sprayed edges. It also has some really fun end pages. There is some really cool maps involved. And as you could see for that one, it is a boat mystery, one of my favorite settings for mysteries, detective fiction, crime fiction. I know not everyone likes the boat setting. I am looking at you, Brittany Loves Reading. However, she also just bought this, so maybe we can turn her into a boat person after all. This one seems like a super fun kind of romp. It says 12 magical blessings, 12 days at sea, 1 chance to stop a killer and save the world. When a beloved heir is murdered, everyone is a suspect. Stuck at sea and surrounded by powerful people, and without a blessing to protect him, Ganymedes' odds of survival are slim. I'm gonna have to get better at that name. But as the bodies pile higher, Ganymedes must become the hero he was not born to be. Can he unmask the killer and their secret blessing before this bloody crusade reaches the shores of Concordia? Or will the empire as he knows it fall? Woohoo! I'm so excited. On top of the fact, not only was this a NetGalley arc that I failed to read in time, it was the voting poll pick for my Manor. The Manor guests get to vote on 1 book every month that I read, and unfortunately, I didn't read this, so we are playing a bit of catch up. That's okay. I'm still very excited to read this. The final book that I'm going to try and squeeze into this vlog is a toss-up at the moment. It's either going to be Baking Bad by Kim M. Watt, or it's going to be Grave Expectations by Alice Bell. This one's a bit more supernatural fantasy because it's involving ghosts. Meanwhile, this one has dragons. So we're not really sure how we're going to end the vlog, what kind of tone I'm going to be closing it with. And the reason why I'm not sure is because these are 2 of the 3 votes that my Manor guests can choose for our book club. We have only murders in the book club. It's for suspects and up. And so I've offered these 2 options as well as the current leading vote, which is Chaos at the Lazy Bones Bookshop. I kind of went for a spoopy October theme for that book club, and I think people are really leaning into this because it's set at like a Halloween town setting with like a Halloween specific shop as the main focus. We'll see what ends up winning. I'm predicting that that one's gonna win. If not, it's gonna be one of these, and whichever one doesn't win, I'm gonna read this week. Really, both of these books are super different vibes. Grave Expectations provides us with a Scooby Gang, also an estate setting, and ghosts, as I said. Meanwhile, Baking Bad is set at a woman's institute, and there is baking involved too, a poisoned cupcake, a vicar who I believe is killed, yes, a murdered vicar, which is also classic, and somehow dragons are involved. So we're kind of going on two sides of the cozy-ish scale. If the Lazy Bones bookshop does end up winning, then it ends up being my choice, and I'm probably going to allow myself to mood read. So whether I'm interested in cozy baking dragons or more the Scooby Gang haunted house feel, we're just gonna find out together. But either way, I think I have a great group of books here. I've got a novella, Tread of Angels. I also have Voyage of the Damned, one that's a newer release, so more people are talking about it. It's also on a boat. I'm so excited. And then we'll see if I go a bit more spooky or spoopy for the kind of cozy feels at the end. Yes, I think we're done. Okay, I will see you guys when I have my first update. Bye! Outside the library, going to go in for a shift, but I thought I better provide an update because if I end up deciding to shelve during the shift, I will have my audiobook running, and this is so short, I might finish it tonight. So I was like, if I don't do a mid-book update now, I might not. So I ended up listening to it earlier today. I ended up getting through about an hour, so it was 25% of the way through, and I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of confused. I felt as though there was a lot happening. I mean, we're dealing with a fantasy mystery set in a historical Western timeline of 1883, mountains of Colorado, a saloon, we've got a card sharp as our main character, there are mentions of the elect, of the fallen, of virtues, of the war in which the start was Lucifer's rebellion. When that was put down, then I think the war actually started and the fallen lost, and there's certain holidays surrounding that, bitter feelings across both sides, so it's just extremely complicated. There's a lot going on. So I ended up deciding to restart it. I'm in the middle of restarting that, so I've caught up about halfway to the point where I was earlier before I started heading to work, and now that I've restarted it, I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable with the various terms going on. Maybe I was doing too much. Maybe I had work on the brain, so I wasn't paying attention as much as I was getting ready. But we have Celeste. She is a mixed race character as far as being half fallen, half elect. Her father is a part of the elect, or was a part of the elect. I don't know if he's still alive. And then on her mother's side, her mother, I believe, is a fallen. That's where her half-sister comes in, Marielle. Marielle is fully part of the fallen, and I suppose that causes some complications and things, and Celeste is able to almost walk among the elect and pretend to be them, because I think it's not visually clear that she is half fallen, whereas Marielle has a certain mark on her that tells her that she is part of the fallen, and Celeste doesn't have that mark, so she pretty much can pretend and walk among the elect, being treated that way, gaining some privileges, I think. At the beginning of the book, there is a saloon fight in which Celeste defends her sister's honor. That seems to be a major theme in the book already. Her feeling as though she always has to protect her sister. She's sacrificed a lot for her sister, including walking away from what seems to be the love of her life, a demon lord. He wanted her to devote her soul, her life, everything to him, give up everything, and in reaction to that, she had to say no, because if she did, she wouldn't be able to protect her sister or remain with her sister, I think. I'm not fully sure what's going on there. That's partially why I restarted the book, and I haven't even returned to that part. But anyways, the whole thing is after this huge bar fight, we end up realizing Marielle's been missing, and then she's in the hands of the Virtues. The Virtues are human, but they're pretty much soldiers for the Archangels, and what they're saying is that Marielle is charged with killing a Virtue. So now the Virtues want to put her on trial, and if she ends up being found guilty, she will be executed. Celeste now has to figure out how to prove that Marielle is not the killer. That's where the mystery comes in, and I think there might also be a court scene, which is very exciting because we used to get a lot of court scenes, for instance, in detective fiction Golden Age, but you don't really see court scenes nowadays unless you're going like directly into the police procedural route. So I'm excited for that, and I will warn people that the audiobook is not for the faint of heart as far as you need to take your time with it. This might be a book that's better physically read, but at the moment it's all I have. I only have the audio, and I'm okay with re-listening because it's so short. So maybe that's a point in its favor, that I'm okay with taking my time with it. But for now, I'm heavily invested. I really want to know what's going on, and I'm excited to see how Celeste decides to prove her sister's innocence. I am on Friday morning sprints with Brittany Loves Reading, Katie from I Would Rather Be Reading, and Neva from Reading with Neva, and all of us are very tired. It is an early morning for us in various forms, various time zones, but we're getting through it. I just took a shower, and then after that I did end up finishing Tread of Angels. I will say I'm a bit disappointed in the end. I'm of two minds because there are some elements that I'm so impressed with. I remember last night when I got home from work, I hadn't finished the book, obviously, so I kept listening as I was getting ready, trying to unwind for the night, and this line is something I'm still going to think about. So I do believe this book isn't going to be ephemeral in my mind. I'm going to think about it throughout my life, and I might return to it to ever reread it, see if I think differently about it. But at one point, Celeste ends up having to strike a deal with one of the Virtues who's in charge of her sister's case. She knows this is a bad idea. He's offered her to basically take the role of lawyer to defend her sister, and she knows that the only option is to say yes, because if she says no, knowing that she is not experienced, that she doesn't have any type of educational background to properly defend her sister, then by saying no, she'll be suggesting to the Virtues that she doesn't believe her sister deserves to be saved, that she doesn't believe her sister is innocent. So she has to say yes, but now her sister's fate is on her shoulders yet again. Throughout this entire life, it seems to be a bit of a pattern for her, that she always feels like she needs to clean up her sister's mess or protect her sister from the world. And she does end up saying yes, but now it's up to her to convince the judge and prevent her sister's execution. I was fascinated by the world. I do wonder if some of my dissatisfaction is linked to how short it is. The author didn't have as much time to allow for the mystery to actually unfold. It was very quick, the realization of what was going on, and we got a bit distracted by Celeste's romance, or at least complicated history with Abraxas, but I'm getting distracted. So back during this deal with the Virtue, Ibrahim, she knows she can't say yes to him, but she also knows she has to say yes to him, and she reflects upon advice given to her by her ex-lover, the demon lord Abraxas, and he warns her to not trust the Virtues because a righteous man has a way of lying to himself. And I found that so interesting because I was waiting for him to say, has a way of lying to you, right? Of being kind of a word sleuth, playing around with wordplay, lying without actually lying on paper. And I think it's fascinating that instead the author decided to end that line with lying to himself, because I think it's true. This righteous man, Ibrahim, doesn't believe he's telling any falsehoods. He's lying to himself just as much as he's lying to Celeste in front of him. And that's an extended metaphor for the West, the Wild West as a setting. And I think it's really fitting, that line being set with a Western background. We're talking about the Wild West. We're talking about the 19th century in America, where lawlessness is run amok, and it's up to the individual person to decide what their moral compass is, what is right, what is wrong. And I think we see that extended when we're talking about religion, especially organized religion, because any type of organized religion, its followers are dependent on some type of greater being telling them what's right or wrong. And it gets murkier when it comes to interpretations, subjectivity. So I'm wondering if Rebecca Roanhouse is discussing that with this man who is, one of the leaders of the law in this world, and how even the law is subjective. We see loopholes all the time. We see different interpretations. So there's a lot going on in such a short narrative, which I have to respect. I just don't know if I'm wholly satisfied. Sorry about the whole holy thing. I didn't mean for that to be a kind of like pun. With that said, I'm gonna go back to sprints, and I also will do another update when I start Voyage of the Damned. I am at work this Saturday morning getting the library ready to be opened, and I'm hoping it's going to be a nice quiet day so I can do some shelf reading, potentially relax at the desk and get some reading done. For now, I'm about 20%, probably a fifth of the way through The Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. I'm really enjoying it, actually. I'm enjoying the humor. There is a complex magical system. It's definitely an impressive fantasy world. However, there's also some modern dialogue as far as the insults, the jokes, the sarcasm from our main character, Dee. Dee is one of the blessed among 12 provinces. There's a 13th that they don't like to talk about because they have been banished from outside the empire across the bandage. So it seems as though everywhere surrounding this empire does not flourish. It is actually like a wasteland, and people are struggling to survive. However, if you're within the kingdom, you're fine. And so the crabs, the one province that has been exiled, is constantly struggling to get back into the fold. And so they're fighting them off. There was a dispute, but the other 12 provinces are supposedly unified, but we know that there are alliances, there are differences between the upper provinces and the lower provinces, and our main character, the fish, is kind of the biggest outcast of them all. He also is hiding a secret. He isn't blessed. Everyone else thinks he is, and I find that quite fascinating because you can see that this leads our main character to self-doubt, to feeling as though he truly doesn't belong, that he isn't worth much. And of course there's interpersonal relationships. There's another character named Ravi that he had a past fling with, and now Ravi is rejecting him ever since his own province became more financially stable and a necessity from the rest of the empire. And at this point, we're on day 2 of the journey, and we've already had a death. Last night, the first day, we ended up seeing the death of our dragon province empress to be, and she seemed like a really nice person. She seemed like she had a lot on her shoulders, and Dee had a lovely moment with her only about 30 minutes before she died. So that was quite sad. And of course, Dee is shocked to know that he may have been the last person to speak with her. There's been the suggestion already that she may have taken her own life, but Dee says that doesn't fully make sense. And we've also met the grasshopper of the Grasshopper province, and she is adorable and wild and crazy, and I think she's got a Northern Irish accent in the audio. I am immersion reading this and having just the best time. The one thing I will say is some of the humor is a bit crass. For instance, there is a joke about someone having to vomit and shit, and I'm just like, why is 2024 the year in which I am reading books that features this kind of humor? I don't get it. But beyond that, I am intrigued by this mystery, and I can't wait to have them all, roaming around their cabins, trying to figure out who to trust and who might be next on their list. I have had such a busy weekend, but it's been worth it, and now it's time for me to spend some time cleaning, getting my apartment set, so that when Monday rolls around, I can feel kind of calm and not feel messy in my head as well as in my environment. But updates galore. I ended up getting some book mail, as you saw, Death in Fancy Dress by Anthony Gilbert. This is for She Done It, the podcast I work for. The following month, we are doing this book for our book club, and Caroline, the host, as well as myself, we are doing a bonus episode where we have a full spoiler-filled discussion of the work, and I'm really excited because I've never read anything by Anthony Gilbert before. I know that she is a woman detective fiction writer from the Golden Age. Her real name was Lucy Beatrice Mallison, and she wrote quite a few books. I just haven't been able to really get access, and this one I ended up having to buy secondhand. I'm very excited though, and I think it's going to be a good time. Other updates, I ended up being able to fill a lot of bookmark orders. I'm very shocked that the most popular bookmark that I'm selling right now for TBR Harvest is the Trick or Treat TBR. It is the most colorful, it's the busiest, and I think it's the least obvious that it's specifically for a readathon, because the other ones say Escape the Corn Maze, Escape the Haunted House. So this one isn't necessarily obvious that it's for a certain activity, and maybe it's going to feel less ephemeral, but it is a very busy, colorful bookmark, so I totally understand. I'm very happy about that. I also ended up getting more mail from Margaret the Word Nerd. I'm one of the guild masters for Fablen, and she ended up sending me a bookmark that she's also selling for her readathon, so if you're interested, definitely check it out. It's honestly, it came out so gorgeous. I'm so impressed. Clearly, we are all in our bookmark era on BookTube, and I can see a lot of bookmarks in my future, both being purchased and possibly being made, because it's really fun. But enough of that. How about some book updates? So for this specific vlog, obviously I'm reading fantasy mysteries, and this one is The Lady of the Hour, Voyage of the Damned. I have made so much progress in 24 hours. So Friday night, I ended up reading about 70 pages, and now, this morning, I'm at page 288. I've been whipping through this book, and it's actually been such a fast-paced read. I'm pretty impressed by how accessible it is, even though it is high fantasy in the idea that it's a complex magical system. There's a long history, about 1,000 years plus, for this society, and we've also have a lot of elements that do lean into murder mystery. So I'm very appreciative. A lot of times, as much as I love genre blends with mysteries, I'm always worried, specifically with fantasy mystery, that we're going to have a higher percentage of fantasy, more than I like. With sci-fi mystery, for instance, I am usually a bit more confident going into that genre blend because I know that the A plot and a lot of the mannerisms, the actions, the conflicts that the characters are going through are mystery focused, whereas with fantasy, we can get very easily distracted. And I do enjoy fantasy. This year, I have embraced fantasy, but I don't want us to forget that the A plot is murder. People are dying. There's a killer on the loose. We need to find them. So I'm really glad that Frances White is totally leaning into the fact that many people are dying, that the goal is to find out who the murderer is, because there are a lot of bodies. I'm actually really impressed and very happy by how many deaths there have been. I said before that I'm surprised by some of the choices, the people who have died. Some of them I expected would have survived to the end of the book, so I like that Frances White isn't afraid to kill anyone. I also really love the representation in here. We have a huge cast of queer characters. We also have a fat main character. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before. We also have some really fascinating discussions on the sidelines. You know, they're not the forefront, but they are at their core very important to the development of this empire, to its customs, to its issues and its flaws. We have learned that some of the provinces had languages that were banned for a universal language. Also, a lot of their customs or traditions are not accepted. So I've really appreciated that discussion of uniformity to bring people together, unity, but uniformity doesn't necessarily mean unity. It actually means forcing people to forget their history, to lose their sense of individuality and their connection to their ancestors. So I'm really appreciating that very casual, subtle discussion. There's also been a lot more commentary on the rejection of the crabs, which was another province. Each province has its animal, and the crabs ended up having a rebellion against their pretty much mad king. Like, the dragon king is mad. They were just waiting for him to die because he's just kind of unraveling, and their rebellion ended up leading to their exile outside of the walls, which is far more dangerous. People are suffering, they're starving, but they are also demonized. They are described as monsters, not as humans. And we're seeing in the latter half of this book more discussion surrounding the crabs and how many injustices have been brought against them simply for wanting reform, for wanting change. I'm really enjoying the cast of characters. I really like Dee. Dee is hilarious and also sensitive. You know, he's going through a lot. He feels as though he doesn't have much value, even though we are seeing him be one of the most proactive people to find justice on the ship, to figure out who ended up killing the various characters. I don't want to tell you who died because I really enjoyed being surprised by the deaths, so I'm keeping it very vague, but I really like the Scooby Gang that he has with him. I suppose I'll tell you who they are. That means you know that they aren't dead yet. The members of his Scooby Gang are small but mighty. We have Grasshopper and we also have Bear. They are definitely the oddballs of the group, these three. They're the outsiders. They're from the lower provinces. So the upper provinces, the northern provinces, reject them, and I guess that allows them to band together and understand their feelings of inferiority against these northern provinces that bully them and intimidate them. It's so cute. It's like a found family, found friendship kind of theme. I adore them. I also ended up being won over by a romance. There is a romantic subplot, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm rooting for them. They're very cute. At first, I didn't really know if I enjoyed the match, if I could see how they would actually meld together, but as the book has progressed and these characters have gotten to know each other, I actually am really happy that this romance is blooming. So yeah, I'm very impressed. Frances White, you're doing a great job. At the moment, the only negative qualities that I'm seeing, the elements that aren't really working for me, include some fanficky YA dialogue. It does feel a bit heavy-handed, a bit too much. There's a lot of times I'm laughing. I'm laughing a lot in this book, but then once in a while there'll be something said and I'll be like, har har, okay, I get it. You're funny, and moving on from there. And I'm calling it a bit YA because I think I see that a lot in YA, where the author's trying to push the humor a little bit too much, push how clever and sarcastic, how witty our characters are. The second problem I'm having with this book is the telling and not showing of investment with other characters who have passed away. There is one character, Lysander. He was originally the tortoise heir, the tortoise, blessed, but he passed away prior to the book's opening pages. He has been replaced by his sister. His sister inherited his blessed magic ability, so she's on the ship. And we are constantly reminded of how lovely Lysander is, how thoughtful, how understanding, how accepting he was, breaking down the barriers between provinces, and genuinely being intrigued by people, by wanting to help everyone and support each other. And he was just this lovely all-around guy. But the problem I'm having is I didn't know him. I didn't meet him. So some of the really sentimental moments are just kind of washing over me because I'm not feeling the same investment as these characters are. So I feel like, not to be insensitive, but I feel like they're harping on his death a lot. I know his death is important. In fact, he may be the first murder that has happened, but no one was aware at the time that there was a killer on the loose. I don't know. I'm opening up to all types of possibilities. Then there's also the death of one character who was our second victim. That one I was really surprised by. I thought this person was going to survive. But now, whenever certain connections are made, some characters are reminiscing, talking about this character, and especially D. D remembers quite a few moments in which this person was kind to him or was listening to him where he opened up to this person. And again, I'm just thinking, I wasn't here. And this person died so early on that I don't know who they are now. I didn't get to see enough scenes with them to really see them as a 3D character. So those are the only gripes that I have with this, is the emphasis on sentimentality towards characters that I didn't have time to become just as invested in. With that, I think I might finish this today. I'm over halfway and I'm really, really enjoying it. I don't have too many tasks on the docket besides the watch along that I'm doing for the Manor. We have been slowly watching Queens of Mystery. It's a modern mystery TV series through Acorn, and we've been watching it on Discord, the Manor's Discord, which has been really fun. We're watching episodes 3 and 4 in about 2 hours, so I do need to prepare for that. But beyond it, the only really goals I have is finishing this book. All right, see you in the next update. Yesterday morning, I ended up finishing Voyage of the Damned, and I overall was really impressed by the plotting of the mystery. There were certain twists that continued right up until almost the end of the book, and I really enjoyed it. There were some red herrings, there were multiple suspects that very well could have been the culprit, and I just really loved Dee as our amateur sleuth, and Dee's companions, Grasshopper and Bear. They just were such a great sleuthing trio, and I was really satisfied by the end of the book, who ended up committing these crimes, why they did, and how justice was served in a pretty appropriate way within the scheme of the fantastical world we were in. Now, was this a perfect narrative? No. I remained a little bit frustrated and kept at a distance from the two characters that kept being brought up, but weren't in the present timeline. One of them I mentioned had died prior to the book's start. The other one died so early on that we didn't get a good feel for any of them in action. So as we were going through and people kept providing anecdotes, kept providing examples for why these two characters were so great or meaningful, it just didn't connect with me. And I really felt at a loss that I was meant to be convinced that these characters were crucial, that they were important, that I knew them, so that when certain reveals happened in the end, I was like, ah, yes, you know, these characters were really pivotal, because they were. These two characters that died early on did end up impacting a lot of the plot all the way up until its end, and I was just like, well, I didn't like that we didn't get to really meet them or know them beyond memories. it just seemed like it was a bit convenient and not as succinct and complex as I would have liked. On top of that, I was really disappointed by something that I know others reading this book might have really liked. There was a certain reveal, a certain twist that, while clever to an extent, also made me feel a bit cheated. And this one is involving the romance of all things. I know that's so strange, and I'm being vague, so I might also not be speaking as accurately as I'd like as far as the descriptors I want to use, because I don't want to spoil anything. But I had mentioned the romance was touch and go at first, wasn't really sure if I was vibing with it, and then I was convinced. I loved these two together. They were adorable, they were very sweet, and I loved how I got to see them grow together. And then there was a reveal that happened, and I didn't like how the characters reacted to it. I didn't like D, specifically, his reaction to it, and I felt cheated as a reader for certain elements that were at play. I can't say anything else because it really would be a pretty big spoiler, not only for the romance, but for other elements that were involving the mystery. But yeah, I'm really disappointed. I wish the author hadn't done that, because it kind of ruined the romance for me. But it is what it is. I would definitely still read from this author again, especially if the author continues to write fantasy mystery. So Frances White, if you do that, I'd be intrigued, because the mystery plot was strong. That part, I will admit, was really strong. It had some really great tropes that I love. Boat mystery, multiple suspects, multiple bodies, and also an amateur sleuth with a Scooby gang that would support them through anything. So yeah, there were a lot of things to really like about this book. And on to the third and final fantasy mystery. This one's definitely more supernatural, paranormal, because we are dealing with ghosts, and it is set in a real timeline, real life, 2023, but I am totally okay with that. And I might say this is potentially one of my favorite books of the year already. I don't know. I know that sounds crazy, but I could see this book being a 5-star right off the bat. I only read a couple pages and I was immediately thinking, this is really good. This is really well done. And now I'm about a quarter of the way through. I think I'm on like chapter 5 or 6, and I am eating it up. I love the cast of characters we have. Speaking of really lovely mystery tropes that are my favorites, I love the estate setting, that there is a dysfunctional, rich family, extended family, and they're all at each other's throats. They have secrets, drama. There is a lot of animosity from past Christmases, past get-togethers that we are kind of digging through. And it's also an estate with such history that there are ghosts everywhere. Ghosts from centuries ago, as well as a very recent ghost that has kind of triggered the investigation that Claire, our medium, has to embark on. So Claire is a really lovely main character already. Yes, she's a medium, and that means she really can see ghosts. She's not a con artist. She's not, the mentalist or psych. She really can see ghosts. And what's hilarious about it is she's very awkward in her interaction with ghosts. She's not very good at the performative actions that you expect with a medium to really entertain the customer, and she knows that that's actually what they want. They don't care that she can talk to ghosts. They just want to have a fun time that they can then go back and tell their friends, family, and then she gets a paycheck. So she's kind of juggling the performative elements that are expected of her and then the true interactions that she has with ghosts, and it is so humorous. She ends up doing a mini seance at the beginning of the weekend. She's been hired by one of the estate's daughters. Her name is Figgy. I believe she is the granddaughter of the matriarch, the Nana, and she ended up going to college with Claire, so that's why she knew Claire was someone she could hire for entertainment. And when Claire arrives, she's like, okay, sure, I'll do a seance. And it's just a hilarious scene in which this gardener who died however many years ago is just causing a muck. And what really adds to the humor of it is that Claire also has a spirit companion named Sophie. So Sophie is helping her perform these seances, blowing into people's faces, causing, a flickering candle. And Sophie is also this teenager from the noughties and just completely so chaotic. She's hilarious, and she's cursing at this gardener who's grabbing her and trying to interact with people, and there's just all this mayhem. And I was like, this is one of the best scenes I've ever read. It's so funny. And now there has been a death. The next morning, the matriarch, Nana, she is discovered dead, and she comes to Claire in her ghostly form. Claire says, "Oh my God, have you been murdered? Like, is this what you're going to be asking me to do, to investigate your death?" And the woman says, "No, I just died of old age. It was my time. I'm fine. However, haven't been dead long. I did peruse the estate and met this really gnarly ghost in the library, and they are in rough shape. Like, they are described as a skeleton with all of its organs still like slowly rotting away, and they're grabbing their head, they're stumbling around, and just like causing really negative, bad vibes across anyone who crosses their path." And Claire is like, "That is terrifying." And because this being doesn't know who they are and doesn't remember anything, they've kind of lost themselves, and apparently that is typical of ghosts who end up experiencing a horrific demise. So Claire and her ghost companion Sophie, they are like, okay, we got to figure out who ended up killing this mysterious figure. We've got a missing person, or at least an unknown identity, which I also love in books. Like when you have a dead body but you don't know who it is. That is very fun and adds to a bit more texture, a bit more complexity to the mystery, because you're like, okay, not only do I have to figure out how you died, who killed you, but who are you? And these two aren't going to be alone in their investigation. Nana ends up telling them that the other two family members that she trusts that could probably help Claire and Sophie would be Basher, her grandson, who's very rough around the edges, very like broody, grumpy man, who's also an ex-detective. So he's dealing with some baggage there. He ended up quitting his job last year. They don't really know why. And then Alex, who's also a teen, but a teen from, this generation growing up, and they are so funny, so chill. They're smoking weed, they're like disrupting and enjoying the family dysfunction, like making fun of everyone and just there for a good time. So I find them to be kind of a breath of fresh air, and honestly the Scooby Gang dynamic is very strong in this book too, which is perfect. So yeah, truly this could be my favorite book of the year, and I'm only 25% in. Oh my gosh, I loved this so much. This is my favorite book of the year right now. Officially, it's my favorite book of the year. I loved it. Honestly, it was such a well-plotted mystery. It was hilarious. We had a great, genuinely Scooby Gang of characters. Yes, they ended up going through ups and downs, especially Claire and Sophie. They had some personal issues to go through, especially because of how dependent their friendship ended up being for each other. Claire holding the burden of Sophie's death, of her as a ghost, her acting as the anchor, Sophie having to see life through Claire's eyes, being dependent on Claire to be her voice always, whether she wanted to speak to someone else, provide an idea. And I was so obsessed. I was obsessed with Claire, with Sophie, with their additional companions that they found in Basher and Alex. And Claire is such a mess. She's such a mess, but in such a the best way possible. I can't say anything more. This was such a good book. I can't wait to read more by Alice Bell, and I hope to God that these characters go on more mysteries. I really hope so. This book in its own right is a standalone, is satisfying. I don't need any more, but I desperately want more. I would love to see Claire and Sophie continue on. In fact, I wouldn't mind a book in which they decide to embark on investigating Sophie's death, trying to provide comfort for her family, for herself. Oh my gosh. And what I love about this book, about this vlog, is that you can see that a mystery plot can be paired very well with other genres. So with a fantasy setting, with a sci-fi setting. I mean, the 3 fantasies I read this week have such different worlds in which the characters are interacting with, but at their heart, they all are tied together because they're mysteries. The first book I ended up reading was Tread of Angels. It was a novella, and it dealt with fantasy in the idea of God, heaven, hell, demons. And then we ended up having The Voyage of the Damned, which was a bit more classic fantasy where it had a completely new world, a completely different history. We had magical abilities, and there was just a little bit more world building compared to Tread of Angels, which was set in Colorado. It's a historical fantasy as well in the 1880s. And then we've got Grave Expectations, which is still a fantasy mystery. It's a paranormal mystery, and it's set in modern day. I think that's so fun. I didn't really think about it when I chose these 3 books, but they're all so different. They demonstrate how versatile a fantasy mystery can be. And oh my gosh, literally each book got better. I'm so glad with the order I chose. It was completely unintentional, but I was really glad I started with Tread of Angels, got a little bit of a taste, probably wanted more from it. It was too short, and I wanted more mystery. There wasn't enough mystery in the proportions. It was a bit too fantasy for me. I needed more investigations from our main character Celeste. And then I ended up having Voyage of the Damned. We ended up being able to tip the scales a bit more 50-50, I would say, because there are a lot of fantastical elements. There was a lot of world building. I mean, we're talking about 1,000 years plus of history, plus the variety of abilities, of magic, magical systems. We had a lot of magical creatures being referenced as well in different forms. And then we have Grave Expectations, which I would argue has the most mystery in it. This one's probably, I would say, rather than 50-50, might be more like 60-70 mystery. And then we have the ghosts. The reason why it might be more 60-40 is just because one of our main characters is a ghost. So she's on page all the time. She's there. You never forget that you're in a paranormal mystery. And it was great. This was such a good book. I had a lot of fun with Voyage of the Damned, even though it wasn't perfect, and even though I did end up being disappointed by certain elements in the end. And Tread of Angels, I could see myself recommending it to others, especially if they are more fantasy lovers than mystery lovers, and they are interested in trying fantasy novellas, which we don't see very often. That means it's time for me to wrap up this vlog. Thank you all so much for getting to the end. I really do appreciate it. I hope that among these 3 options, you might have found a book that you're interested in reading. Also, feel free to include in the comments any suggestions, any fantasy mysteries that you think I would really enjoy, or you'd be interested in seeing me reading, or just ones on your radar, ones that you haven't read yet, but you are really excited to read eventually. And yeah, let me know if I've convinced you to read any of these, especially this one. Thank you so much to my Manor guests as well. We recently had a new suspect join our midst. This is Melinda. I'm so excited to have you join us, even though you probably committed the murder. It's fine. We'll find a way to work through it. But also thank you to my other guests, my sleuths, my witnesses, my suspects, and my corpses. You're all the best, and I really can't wait to see all of you in the next one.